Welcome to the Plays of the Week show with the Podfather. Off we go. Fast draft Plays of the Week. Let's do this. Quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. He's happening. I can't believe it. But you have to admit, the Jaguars are winning. He looks good in spite of disappointing season, to say the least. I mean, what is the word? The word disappointment does not describe Brian Thomas. No Travis Hunter. He's got nothing from Travis Hunter this year, and yet still there's Trevor Lawrence exceeding expectations for the first time in his life. Well, not the first time in his life. I'm sure there was at some point in middle school that he broke out and became a top recruit and went to Clemson. But in recent memory, Trevor Lawrence has had a hard time exceeding expectations, but now is the time. He has his field stretcher now. Brian Thomas is not necessarily a volume alpha. It's hard to describe him as that anymore. He is a field stretcher, though. He's a very dynamic field stretcher, and that's great for the quarterback. It's also great to have one of the best possession receivers in the league in Jacobi Meyers. This is all clicking together, and Trevor Lawrence is chalk. Like, he is 1 or 2 in terms of ownership for this week's slate on both DK and FanDuel. So if DraftKings and FanDuel, everybody's in on Trevor Lawrence. I mean, as chalky as it gets at quarterback this week. And it's one of those things where it's like sometimes it's just good chalk. You go with it and you don't second guess it. Streaming this week. Couple different streaming options that are nice. I see some people trying to stream Tyler Shough, Shedeur Sanders as sleepers, and I'm just I would lean Shough if it came to that. If it came to that level of desperation, I would go Shough over Sanders, where it's too early to stream Sanders. That's some hope trafficking. That's still some of the Colorado shine. Leading to this, someone starting Shedeur Sanders? No, it's not time to start Shedeur Sanders. The problem is, though, with Shough, the Bucs don't allow a lot of fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. The Bucs just don't allow a lot of fantasy points. That's the issue, right? It's not the Bucs defense from 3 years ago that was giving up a lot of points, especially with when Tom Brady was under center and he was pushing the games into shootout mode. Yeah, you'd always want to play receivers against your Buccaneers, right? Quarterback, great streaming options, but I'm leaning Tyrod Taylor. If I have to stream someone this week, I'm going to go Tyrod Taylor because there's this comfort in knowing he's going to be running the ball, especially in the red zone. Ran for a touchdown last week, over 40 yards rushing. That's that baseline of fantasy points that we're looking for. And then if he does happen to hit Adonai Mitchell on a deep target, suddenly we're talking 20-plus fantasy points. But knowing that he's throwing 12 targets to Adonai Mitchell deep last week, this is not the Tyrod Taylor that I'm accustomed to. If we're getting both the rushing and deep shots from Tyrod Taylor, I want in on this game. I want in on this. Absolutely. The Jets should be competitive in this. I'm streaming. Yeah, I think it's safe to stream Tyrod Taylor. I just think it's much safer than Shough. Much safer. Ooh, certainly much safer. Oh, my God. So much safer than Shedeur Sanders. Jeez, I can't even. What? What are we even talking about here? All right, so let's pull up the game totals and continue. If you're going to be stashing a quarterback this week in case he gets thrust into a starting role, Kenny Pickett has mobility. Kenny Pickett has some weapons there, Bowers, and that's it. But so there's something to like about Kenny Pickett. The Raiders are under pressure to win. They're 7.5-point dogs at home, and it really makes sense that if Geno Smith struggles, they're just going to be like, okay, this is it. This is the vaudevillian Kane. You're out. I can see that happening. Okay, you can all see that happening, right? You can see it, right? At running back, Quinshon Judkins. This is not news to anyone that they should be starting Quinshon Judkins, but I think Quinshon Judkins is all teed up for a complete monster breakout game in fantasy football. Dylan Sampson is out. That means more targets are going to be going, more touches overall to Judkins. Now, the total is just 33.5. But Judkins is very usable. I think even in a format like the Super Slam, the Fast Draft Super Slam, where you're just picking any 6 guys, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Super Slam later. And you want the 6 players with the most upside. But it's nice to get at least one guy that has not in the top 6, not the chalkiest plays of the week. Quinshon Judkins is not one of the chalkiest position players, but he is a must-start. And in DK, FanDuel, DraftKings, Fast Draft, everything, Underdog, everything you're playing, you're absolutely you want to be overweight on Quinshon Judkins. Just get in there, size, speed, athleticism. Now he's getting the catches. I mean, this is it, right? We may not see his salary this low in salary cap DFS all year after this big game. Now, I know it's the low total is usually you're not going for players in these low total games, but home game against the NFL's worst team, where the Browns are actually favored by 4 points. In that particular scenario, we can tout a player on a team in a game with a 33-point total, though that is just such a rare thing. It's so crazy. It's just, I can't. Yes, we're doing it. We're doing it. Let's do it. Devin Neal. We're going back to Devin Neal last week. He's been hogging the opportunities. Said, hey, he's a play of the week. He's a play of the week again this week, right? And I know we didn't do a show on this, but the plays of the week are always on patreon.com/podfathers, even if we don't have time or have the facilities, as I didn't last week, to do this video. You can always get the plays of the week on Patreon. And I know Tampa's a stout, or no, it is. They're good against the run. But when you talk about a guy that's getting like 70% of the opportunity share, and he has an all-purpose skill set, and they've lost a bunch of receivers, they're going to have to dump it off more to Devin Neal. Yeah, I like Devin Neal this week. I like Devin Neal. He's a counterintuitive play. You look in the 6th round of the Flex 6 Frenzy on Fast Draft, he's only getting drafted half the time. And this is a starting running back. I mean, it's a rare thing that a guy would go undrafted in the Flex 6 Frenzy on Fast Draft, 6 rounds where you're picking running backs, wide receivers, tight ends for this week, and yet he's not getting drafted. I thought that was very strange to see that. I thought he'd at least have an 80+% ownership, but he doesn't. So there's an opportunity there on Fast Draft. The code is FAST to get a $50 deposit match. Another running back is Aaron Jones. You're drafting him in the Flex 6 Frenzy. There that gets a little fringier once you get to Aaron Jones, right? We're in the fringy section of the running backs to talk about today. Aaron Jones, sneaky efficient, right? We like him. He's a good player. He's a good all-around player. The Commanders, they love to roll out the light boxes. They give up a lot of vision yards to opposing running backs. This would be the week to play Aaron Jones. In fact, I like both Aaron Jones and Chris Rodriguez in this game. Rodriguez is a better option with Daniels under center. That sounds counterintuitive, does it? Well, Mariota also runs. And Daniels is coming off injury. So if there's going to be a game where they're going to be less likely to call a QB run for Daniels, it's going to be this week. And so Daniels, with these healthy, like you get Debo back, you get McLaurin, maybe, right? Now, this is not the same Commanders team we've seen last 4 or 5 weeks. This is the only thing different about this Commanders team now than, say, week 1 or 2, really, the biggest difference is the running back. Chris Rodriguez was a game day inactive back when this roster had this constitution, right? So now we've got weapons to keep drives alive. We've got our all-pro starting quarterback, and the only difference is, we got a brand new running back who's better between the tackles than anyone else on this roster, and is more likely than any running back this year on the Commanders to get any given red zone touch or green zone touch or goal line touch. This is all good news for Chris Rodriguez. Again, I know that the instinct is, oh, this is a super mobile quarterback in Jaden Daniels, so the touchdown equity we're hoping to get with Chris Rodriguez goes down. He's already a non-factor in the passing game. What are we really getting out of Chris Rodriguez? Well, I believe, again, this week, there is a higher likelihood than almost any other week that Chris Rodriguez can score 2 touchdowns, and that's why. And he's also down the board. This is in the fringe category. Are you going to be playing Chris Rodriguez in the Flex 6 frenzy? If you're in the 6th round, you're going to be drafting him for this week. I think that's the border. I think Devin Neal should be drafted in all these drafts. Chris Rodriguez is I could see him finishing with a 50% rostership in the Flex 6 frenzy on Fast Draft. And the cool thing this week about Fast Draft is the prize pools are as big as they've ever been for DFS. $5,000 prize pool for the Quick 6 Super Slam and a $3,000 prize pool for the Flex 6 Frenzy. That's as high as those prize pools have been. We're also giving out a $100 max entry bonus. If you max enter both tournaments, then congratulations. Like, you'll get $100 in promo funds in your account. So this is a good week. This is a good week to be playing on Fast Draft. The final running back I want to talk about, Blake Corum. Blake Corum, he is the new 1B running back in Los Angeles. He is a better player than Kyren Williams. I know this sounds crazy, right? But he is, right? Kyren Williams is the 3rd best running back on the Rams. Jarquez Hunter, better player than Kyren Williams. And you will see it. Kyren Williams just happens to be the established incumbent with the most experience. But that doesn't mean he's a better running back than Hunter or Corum. I think the order goes Hunter, Corum, Williams. The depth chart is the reverse, and that's okay. We can at least get Corum in there. They're big favorites against the Cardinals. Now, if there is some garbage time at the end and they're up double digits, you're going to see a lot of Corum, especially with Kyren Williams banged up. So there's some fringe desperation attributes that we can assign this week to Blake Corum. I think he is a sneaky start in deep leagues, right? He is fringy, but he's a guy you can dabble on in a handful of your DFS teams, and he's also a player that you could conceivably start in flex or an RB2 spot in these deep leagues, or if you have buys. There's still a bunch of bye weeks, a bunch of teams with bye weeks this week, and some of you have injuries. So there are scenarios where it actually could make some sense to play Blake Corum. I wouldn't be shy just because Kyren Williams is active. I think there's plenty of scenarios where Blake Corum gets there. Now, another player I want to talk about that I think is usable in the Quick 6 Super Slam is Chris Olave. Rashid Shaheed's gone. Brandon Cooks is gone. And Tyler Shough is more likely to throw the ball downfield, push the ball downfield, than, say, Spencer Rattler. And it shows in the air yards. It's now a very rare thing that you look up and Chris Olave has less than 100 air yards in any given game. He's number 3 in the NFL among wide receivers in air yards. Now, I also see there's a lot of people saying, hey, this is a great week to play Vele, and we're going to go deep. Say, again, the same reason I'm not playing Shough, I'm not playing Vele. Right? Like, slow down. The Saints are a bad team. The Buccaneers are a good defense. They just don't give up a lot of fantasy points. The one player that you do want to target is the star of the team or the running back hogging all the touches. That would be Devin, Neal, and Chris Olave, but I'm not going any deeper than that this week with the Saints. No, thank you. Chris Olave, his upside is so great. If things break his way, getting all these air yards, he could absolutely come through and be a great option that you might want to dabble on, have 1 or 2 lineups in the Super Slam with Chris Olave. I'm just saying it's not crazy. It's not crazy. And here's a little bit more about the Super Slam if you're curious. Hey, what's this Quick 6 Super Slam all about in Fast Draft? Well, I can tell you, Quick 6 Super Slam is so fun because you can just imagine a world where you can draft anybody. Christian McCaffrey, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs. They're all up for grabs. There's no salaries. And we sort the player list by ownership, so you can see who everyone else is selecting this week as well. You can go super chalk, or you can go off the board, find a sleeper or two. That's a major strategy element, as well as the boosters. There's a 2x, 1.75x, 1.5, and 1.25x boosters. So the players that you believe have the most upside should be put in the maximum booster, because when they hit, boom, they go boom. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. Couldn't have said it better myself, actually, about the quick 6 super slam. Then there's Michael Wilson. I mean, do we need to talk about Michael Wilson again? I mean, we have these players, right? We have their player profile or player pages. And typically it's like, I got a whole new group of guys. I want to show off their player pages. Yeah, Isaac Tesla, right? But he already played, right? And he scored. A guy like Michael Wilson, best comparable to Michael Crabtree. That's right, on Player Profiler. And there's nothing not to like. You know, the Rams give up a lot of fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. There's a heel injury keeping Marvin Harrison Jr. out. Michael Wilson's already had some spike weeks. You don't have to overthink this. This is going to be a chalky play. And I think that this is one of the best targets in the Flex 6 frenzy in the back half of that draft would be a guy like Michael Wilson. His ownership on DraftKings is projected to be very low on RotoGrinders, just like 3%, because his salary is inflated. I think that it's worth it. I think this is one of those guys where he's viewed as like a free square wide receiver that's been priced up and therefore doesn't get the ownership. And I think that's the perfect guy to play on DraftKings to be able to go against the field with ownership with a guy that has big upside and is in the perfect situation, has already done it this year. Then there's Jacobi Meyers and Brian Thomas Jr. Talked about them earlier. Play them both this week. And I think this would be the week. If you're not going to play Brian Thomas Jr., just drop him. You're clearly playing Meyers. That's an obvious move. But even Brian Thomas Jr. is very interesting against the Colts in particular. He has boom week potential. He's working his way back from injury. He hasn't been 100%. You know, 1 week we're all going to look up and be like, oh, that's right, Brian Thomas is explosive and he has spike week potential. He hasn't lost that. He hasn't forgotten how to play football. This would be the week. This is the week to play a guy who is on a complete cooler all year, and yet you know a spike week is out there lurking for Brian Thomas. Why not this week? I like the Broncos this week as well. I like to stack these Broncos wide receivers with Brock Bowers, a little mini stack in that Broncos-Raiders game. I like the game because it is in Las Vegas. If this was in Denver, I wouldn't want any part of this game. But having it in Las Vegas gives the Raiders a chance to at least be competitive and push the pace. Bowers Sutton and Bowers Franklin, I like both. I'm not here for Pat Bryant. You know that about me. I'm going right back to the guys that are getting the most snaps, commanding the targets, consistent producers all year. Troy Franklin, more consistent than Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton's been consistently bad most of the year, but he bookended his game log with some good performances at the beginning of the year, and then he reemerged last week and reminded everybody, hey, I'm the alpha here. And so I could absolutely see against the Raiders him continuing that, to continue to be the most productive of the wide receivers, and he and Brock Bowers get there this week. I think that's very possible. I like that, the Sutton-Bowers stack in particular, but I just don't want people to forget that Troy Franklin is good at football, and he's better than Pat Bryant, and he is startable this week because it is the Raiders. Again, if you're not going to play him and you have him against the Raiders, drop him. I mean, what are you doing, right? Then there's DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf has been disappointing, but last few weeks, it's been Mason Rudolph. gets Aaron Rodgers. Look at the snap shares of the other receivers. Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson. Their snap shares are below 50%. Why? Because they're playing 2 tight ends at all times, if not 3. Right? They love the heavy packages in Pittsburgh, but there's always that DK Metcalf out on an island playing X. And who loves throwing the back shoulder more than Aaron Rodgers? Nobody. So this is the perfect skill match. I think that this is the week that we get DK Metcalf looking like DK Metcalf once again. It's the right matchup. It's the right game situation. It's the Ravens. Like, you don't overthink this. If I told you that DK Metcalf would be in this particular situation with Aaron Rodgers facing off against one of the league's worst secondaries, if I told you this at the beginning of the year, you would be playing him. You know he's healthy. He's just struggled. Some reasons are because he is one of these receivers that he's going to have a short career for a player with his stature and athletic profile. We've talked about this many times. Like, he is on the Demaryius Thomas, Randy Moss trajectory. He's not Terrell Owens. He's not Larry Fitzgerald. He does not work hard off the field. He is getting by with his athletic profile, and those players leak efficiency year over year in the NFL. So you're not drafting them for your season-long fantasy league, but you are taking advantage when the matchup is right, the situation makes sense. Those wide receivers on the back half of their career, in their late 20s, they should be played strategically in DFS, and that is this week for DK Metcalf. Luther Burden. We've talked about Luther Burden many times and how everyone's in a rush to play Burden and to pick up Burden. No, right? It's always no, wait, right? What would we say? Hold, and then I'll tell you, I'll give you the signal. And the signal is DJ Moore is out. The signal is Rome Odunze's out. A couple weeks ago, we thought DJ Moore might miss. He didn't. So we said, hold. Now we know Rome Odunze is not playing. So we're saying go. Now is the time to play Luther Burden. Now is the moment. Even though Green Bay, they have a good secondary, but the bottom line is it's in Green Bay. Chicago's going to have to throw to be competitive in this game, and Burden is going to gobble up the targets. He does have a 19 fantasy point game on his resume from week 3. He hasn't crested 10 fantasy points other than that 1 week because he's not the 1 or 2 on the wide receiver pecking order. Now he is. Play him. And then the point chase of the week. You have 2 choices for point chasing. Green light to point chase on Adonai Mitchell. Right? We touted him last week in the Plays of the Week on Patreon. We're going to tout him again this week. It was our call of the week last week was Adonai Mitchell. I could just go right back to it, right? I went back to Devin Neal. But no. We're going Dontavian Wicks. Dontavian Wicks is point chasing in the best possible way. Jaden Reed is questionable, but I do not think, based on the practice reports and, reading between the lines, what the coaches are saying, he seems, especially with a super svelte receiver like Jaden Reed, who's dealt with a lot of lower body injuries already, I see him sitting 1 more week. The team has clearly moved on from the dud that is Romeo Dubs. We talked about Romeo Dubs being one of the worst receivers in the league, and shockingly, the number 1 receiver on the Packers for a brief period of time with his 5 catches for 60 yards, his 11 fantasy points. Wow! Oh my God! And now we're in a situation where they're just airing it out to Christian Watson, and they're targeting Dontavian Wicks in the red zone. Oh, it's almost like that's the optimal move. I think they continue to do that. Dontavian Wicks builds on this breakout performance against Detroit and go right back to him. Go right back to him against the Bears. Tight end. Now, I had the lock. My lock for a tight end was going to be Dalton Kincaid. I was hoping, right? That was very much, I was injecting the hopium there. And then I started reading reports about him wearing a knee brace and him not. If you can't have a full practice on Friday, I get nervous. Things were trending, limited practice on Wednesday. Things were trending toward him having a full go on Friday, and that would be my lock, given that it's the Bengals and they give up the most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. It's not going to be that easy. Now, if he's active, he may not be 100%. I just don't feel good about it. I don't love the Thursday knee brace. Okay. Meanwhile, Kyle Pitts doesn't need a knee brace. Kyle Pitts is the number one option. I think it's highly unlikely with all the DNPs that you're going to see Drake London this week. I know it's a game time decision. He certainly could play. If Drake London does play, this is less of a lock, but he's not going to be at 100%. The bottom line is Kirk Cousins is now locking in on Kyle Pitts. And in this particular game, this Falcons game, the Seahawks just snuff out opposing wide receivers anyway. So even if you had London, you wouldn't want to play him against the Seahawks at less than 100%, would you? I was considering talking about Darnell Mooney again today. But Darnell Mooney's going against the Seahawks. That's a headwind I don't need any part of, especially if Kirk Cousins is already determined, hey, my number one guy, my first read is Kyle Pitts. My second read is Bijan Robinson. Think that continues. And what will happen is the displacement of targets from the outside to the middle. So even though the Seahawks, like the Buccaneers we talked about earlier, they just have a good defense. They just don't allow a lot of fantasy points, period, to opposing teams. If there was a player that would benefit from the way the Seahawks really wall off the opposing wide receivers, it would be the tight end down the seam. So I think just the way the Seahawks play defense, it makes sense to play Kyle Pitts this week, especially given what we saw last week. So again, I think this is point chasing again. I think, Mitchell, Wicks, and now Pitts. I think I might have to be pulled over. Officer, yeah, I was point chasing. I admit it. I'm sorry. Please give me a warning. And then I got a high confidence play at tight end. It's Harold Fannin. Rookie quarterbacks love a tight end. That is a tale as old as time because it's true. It's a cliche, but it's also true. Is Shedeur Sanders good enough to stream? No. But is he good enough to play Judkins at a higher rate than the field? Yes. Is he good enough to play a tight end like Harold Fannin, especially if you believe Harold Fannin will be the target leader again? Yes. Right? In these games with low totals, with bad quarterback play, especially at home, you can play the running back freely, and you can also dabble on that team's tight end if the situation is right. And I think the situation is right this week for Harold Fannin. I think this is the week that he turns target share into fantasy share. I think finally you're going to see him start to really break out in fantasy. He had the touchdown last week. I think if he can get the yardage and the touchdown, you can have like a Brock Bowers light type week. That's in his range of outcomes. Remember, it's not like Brock Bowers is on a good team either. Fringe play, Colby Parkinson. That's right. Colby Parkinson. His targets are up without Higbee. This is a game that we're targeting. I don't like Colby Parkinson. Why would I? I mean, this is not a player I'm excited about. Typically, I like to play tight ends that have athleticism. A guy I can get fired up. I mean, we're talking about 22nd percentile burst score on Player Profiler for Parkinson. Why am I playing this guy? I'm playing this guy for one reason: the situation. As long as I've been doing this, Arizona's been giving up fantasy points to opposing tight ends. And they give up top 5 fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. That is what the Cardinals do. If you're ever going to play an unathletic tight end, make sure it's a guy on a team that doesn't have a target magnet running back, doesn't have a wide receiver 3 of consequence, and is going up against a team that gives up a lot of fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Colby Parkinson. Mr. Colby Parkinson. Check, check, check.